Hello everyone. Hopefully my voice is loud enough. I've made some notes for this episode, but the idea is more fascinating than any notes I can read from that I've made. First of all, an explanation of the topic. How can space be a non-physical presence? To cut it short, let me share an approach with you. There came a moment in my life where I wondered about how chess masters, how these guys are playing chess. And if we consider their act in the modern culture to be considered as thinking, and someone looking at a chess master and being like, wow, that person's like, their thinking is so complex. What really is actually taking place is, in some sense, everything is information. And you group up this information, you block, you create, not in the sense of like a barricade, but you create information blocks. Now, when you look at life, like if we were to apply this classification system, so pretty much what I'm trying to say is that chess masters, they have incredible recognition ability. They have grouped and categorized patterns, so it cuts time in thinking about it. It's another way of saying probabilities and the sequence of the behavior of those probabilities, they are grouped. And so there are levels to looking at the chessboard, you know, like the location of the pawns. When I look at humanity, I see actually a creature that is not just eating food to stay alive. I see a creature that is consuming information so that its mind can say it has a life. What is really going on in this world is that attention has contacted information, and attention holds the ability And just a reminder, this is I'm attempting to make it more of a technical episode. So pretty much this episode is me archiving my notes, just so you don't mind. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is that instead of coming up with new patterns, it is recognizing old patterns in new ways. Okay? Everything is based on information. A person's personality is unique information painted by their experiences in life. There's even artificial information, which is another way of saying the information is a mirage in the desert. For me, there was a time in my life where I thought I could just, focus on one thing in my life. I shouldn't say one thing, one topic out of all the different topics there are in the world. But what I have realized is that information basks in the mystery of its own presence. Pretty much, it's kind of like the brain is like a video camera. This video camera is recording events. This is your conscious life. The information defines the viewer. Now, the biggest mystery of information, I mean, because we are genetical information, it's as if like when a young child asks, what is the world made of? The answer is matter. What is matter? Particles structured in a certain way, right? So what it is that the human species has accepted a simple, raw geometric expression as the source of its physical reality. But really, for this episode, something important that it's like deep down at the core of my being, I feel like I want to share, is that I have for some time thought or considered or fathomed that perhaps we are not purely physical. We're not physical beings. And if we're not physical beings, that's not just a game changer, that's a world changer. Because the way space is being acknowledged is that it's something that is there, but it has no content. It is what holds content. Space is like the alien of the physical universe. That means if the elements in the periodic table suddenly had personalities and they wanted to understand where they are, they would come into contact with the recognition that they are just here. You know, it's like all these new age gurus tell people to come into the here and now, and everybody's like, oh my God, I'm present, I'm here and now, you know. But then the question comes, where is the here and now? And then you realize there is no here and now. You see, if there's, think of it this way, one probability, one approach, which usually I see that has been kind of taken on this planet, is that we are treating like the focus point, the causal position of reality to be existential, right? And we are considering experience to be like an additional dimension of a hallucination upon this existence. So in one perspective, we are like a material being hallucinating in materialism, and then from another angle, we are an immaterial being hallucinating materialism. And these are ways of saying that the moment the human being realized it had a mind, it accessed another life. That means it's not just your body that has a mind, your mind has a body. And what it means is that there's an intelligence here for the human being that can see something, close its eyes, and have that image access a sort of a person's own private Photoshop studio called imagination. The mind is incredibly capable in readjusting reality, displaying it, and creating a sort of contrast mechanism for the human psyche to survive. What really survival is like how far you've seen in the future. You know, everybody is actually surviving well, but they are not, their survival is time-based. That means if we wanted to measure like 1 minute of human survival, everybody was okay, everybody survived a minute, right? But if we were to fathom like 10,000 years into the future of the evolution of the human species, it's as if the concept of survival would perhaps transition. It's as if it's like somebody who was about to pick up the rug, but the rug was pulled from underneath their feet, and they realized that their feet went with the rug. That means what is truly present here is a mystery that is between the axis of being static and dynamic, being invisible and visible, being known and unknown, and beyond the most profound, physical and non-physical. You see, it's as if we care where our bodies are, but we don't care where our minds are. You know, in culture, we use terms like a person is out of their mind, or a person who found their mind or went back in their mind. Do you know? When a person goes unconscious, you can say that person's mind exited the room of the conscious waking state. You see, ladies and gentlemen, we are a living mystery, and by its ability to be patient and contemplate through a multidimensional context, there's something that I need to read for the listeners. It's something that I wrote with this sentence I'm going to read for you. Pretty much for this episode, I have 3 notes. And then once I get through those notes, and then it becomes, free flow after that. But I'll say it this way, that before this episode, this was the quote that found me, that in some sense inspired this episode. I wrote, "If we understand what space is, the secrets of matter will be revealed." So what I'm trying to say, like so far in this episode, is that when we look at what we are, we say we're physical beings. When we look at the physics, we go into the realm of geometry, and we go into the realm of the classification of information. It's as if some people want to learn different branches of knowledge, and some people are like, where is the tree? That means some people want to know more, some people want to know the knower. The latter experience a way more multidimensionally fulfilling life. So, in the pursuit of trying to understand what space is, we actually reach the edge of information. Now, I'll go to my next point. This was something that I did. I wrote it in the subtitle. 1 minute infinite versions exercise, like Mr.Within's 1 minute. So pretty much I did something, and I thought, okay, let me come and share it with the global tribe, the global cyberspace tribe. Pretty much for 1 minute, I just stopped everything I was doing, and I was like, let me see in 1 minute how many different versions of myself can I fathom in the moment, as if a sort of infinite attempt. And when I did this, guys, there came I'm just commenting on how the experience was. It was like for 1 minute my mind was just wondering about the different versions of me, different angles to the moment of my own existence. And eventually I realized, because I can see so many angles, it's as if I am beyond a perception. That means it's as if when you realize how many different views you can have to the moment, how many hidden angles there are to every moment of life, it's as if it's like one snapshot of information is not enough. All those people who are, let's say, stressed, or like I read on this website, World Health Organization, where they were like, I don't know, like a giant percentage of the human population is like depressed. So it's as if for me, those who are depressed, they have reacted to the first snapshot of their mind. That means, imagine you were a great master of this great student, and the student was your mind, and the master was your free will. So imagine you imagine you are in the role of being the greatest master of your own intelligence, and you're in the same role of being the greatest student. So as the greatest master, the whole point of a teacher is to push the students beyond their limits, because that way humanity advances. what we call teachers today, in the future, they're going to be known as truth breakers. They break limiting truths and dispel the artificial in the presence of the precision of what is important in real life. It's like this, that a person's like, if you were, three different approaches can be taken. If you're a materialist, the question comes, where is matter? How is matter being known? How does matter know its matter? That instantly opens up the position of the transcendental viewer, which a person can try to use as many words to explain the inner witness, but aside from these words of inner witness, I don't think there's anything else that can get closer to it. Perhaps an attributeless witness. But what it is that it's like an intersection of a vertical and horizontal dimension. So it's like horizontally we are physical, singular dimension, objective beings, but vertically there are various ways that our eyes are open before we have even eyes in those worlds. You see, what is going on is that the micro has become aware of the macro. The macro is so beyond the micro's perception, it has gotten overwhelmed and reacted. You see, on some level, the concept of humanity or a civilization is a reaction to the void. On some level, like, sure, human beings went from the jungle to the concrete jungle, right? But the planet was in the jungle of the void. You see, there are truths, or there are observational facts about the world that in some sense shake the ideology one has held in a changing world. So, in my own speculation, I'm 1 in 8 billion plus human beings in a cosmos with countless stars. But what I have noticed is really that after I have asked, how am I being an object, it's as if like without the mind, there is no light in the room. You see, there's an instantaneous thing about consciousness. See, the body is born, right? The body, it's like the child is born. But when it comes to the mind does not have birth and death. The mind has, in some sense, activation, has awakening, and then going back to sleep. That is the cycle of this system we're in. It's not just us, it's as if the person believed in demigods and went to some, polytheistic priest and was like, hey, do the gods sleep? And you'll be fascinated that in Vedic thought, they had this vision that 3 days of Krishna, or sorry, it could have been Brahman sleeping, 3 days of Brahman sleeping is equivalent to 54 million years of like human life. Okay, that means that when you look at ancient traditions, their scope, they didn't have telescopes, but their imagination had a wilderness that our current era has forgotten. It's not just we were vicious as the wilderness was on a physical level. There was a psychological wilderness. It wasn't per se survival of the fittest. It was just like a massive wave, and whatever part of the wave made it to the next round succeeded, right? So to me, what really life is that it's actually starting hilariously in a binary system. Okay, so what that means is like, imagine 0, 1, 0, 1. That means nothing, no effort, no effort, no effort. So to me, the earliest levels, the foundation of the echo of the genetics and the human genetical memory, right? It goes to a point where we were just, when the sun arose, every atom in some sense awoke. Do you see? Every cell responded to the light that had entered its realm. You see? What I'm trying to get at is really that when we reach the edge of information, we realize the last information left is an unknown variable. Now, I thought about it this way, aside from this exercise of a person closing their eyes and for 1 minute, or their eyes could be open, if they want to enhance their skill. And they fathom all the different versions to themselves. Eventually, you'll see it's as if you are no thought you have ever had. Maybe thoughts have had you in certain moments and animated as an archetype through you, but on some level, nobody is actually a thought. You are an awareness to it. That awareness cannot be thought. Right? So it's like a person wondering, let's say there's person A and there's person B, and person A and person B, person A looks at person B, and person A doesn't actually see person B. Person A, the impression they get of person B is based on all their memories in the past. So what this means is that whether we like or dislike people, it is like the dance of our own memory. So the brain is projecting over what it sees. And then if this is really what makes a person egotistical, if they get convinced by their inner realms and avoid the outer realms, it's as if they become like a shackled titan by the desires of an inner universe, Person A is not seeing person B, person A is seeing person AB. From the past of person A, the meaning of person B is colored. It's another way of saying what we see in people is what we actually have become conscious within ourselves. So now think of it this way. You look at someone, I'm pretty much trying to say person A looks at person B, it's a reflection. The impression they get of person B is a reflection of themselves. Now, if that's the case, if the brain is projecting meaning into a phenomenon, something spectacular is noticed. That the moment you look at what you mean to yourself, what the first impression of yourself to yourself is, you notice that you are putting the meaning there. So it's as if even though there's a physical landscape, there is an invisible field where in this invisible field, the physical landscape can be copy-pasted and shifted. There can be this argument that it was a universe, but the moment the evolutionary animal became conscious, or the human being had a sense of self, subjective sense of self, that's when parallel universes began. Without language or even arithmetic, Without classification, there would be no concept of a parallel universe, you know. So it's the mind that is adding the multidimensionalism to the meaning of the moment. Pretty much, I think the last note is just this question I wrote: are we even physical beings? I mean, this is, you know, philosophically a good question. Probably culturally not a good question to ask. But if a person wonders that, okay, let's say there's a chance that like what is here is not physical, does that mean this whole time there has been a non-physical life? Does that mean that, like the tip of an iceberg, this whole time consciousness has had an unconscious life? The afterlife, you know, is taking place right now. The afterlife is pretty much the future of the mind. The mind wants to go to heaven. The body is just a container. You can say the body is a container for heaven, for the mind that goes to heaven. And what heaven is poetically, at least this is the healthiest view on it I think a person can have. A heaven is an ultimate state. You know, it's an ultimate efficient state. That means if you were any shape, its efficiency is activated. Pretty much it's the spectrumization of the mind, of creating out of a singular physical existential event chaos and order as implications. Honestly, all knowledge is just, you know, a live stream of how the world is happening. The past can never get it right. And the future knows what the present will soon. You see, it's like the moment you realize from the beginning of your life you have been the space where your existence has taken place simultaneously as where it's like every physical motion of the body, it has been happening in space. And space being acknowledged as a non-physical presence, just take that in as something that is here, but there is nothing in it to suggest a sense of here. Space is the most bizarre breaking of logic. You know, it is the most illogical thing, space. But it surrounds us. We are surrounded beyond the meanings of our planetary advancement. You see, when I give these talks, because deep down I feel like a mystic. And a mystic is another way of saying a human being that has been humbled by the vastness and the immensity, the intensity of how much we don't know yet. You see, to me, when I was younger, it's like I wanted to know things. It's like now for me, it's like the edge of knowledge is fascinating. And the edge of knowledge is another way of saying it's where novelty lives. Pretty much, if there is a non-physical yet still visible. Imagination is not physical, but it's visible. So imagine a non-physical. The mind is glowing things up. That's the best way visually I can say. It's as if everything we look at, it has the glow of our own mind in it. It's shining of our own light, you know. Now, the brain looks at the body. The man looks in the mirror. And it's as if, is it man staring at a universe, or is the universe staring at man? You know, are we defined by the concept of reality, or are we defined by the context of reality? Its context is experientially unknown. Its concept is, you know, conceptually known. There's a paradox. You see what I'm trying to say? Like, space doesn't make sense. And because space doesn't make sense, all our views on what is in space is shaky. But really what space is, it is a field that consciousness connects to. You know what it is? It's like, this might be bizarre, but it's as if Earth is inside the brain of a universe. Poetically, it's like Earth is the pineal gland, or Earth is the throat chakra of the universe. You know? In the chat section, somebody says, can we change this program like the DNA? And I'll tell you, you're thinking too small. You want to change your DNA when there are mysteries beyond the individual self. You see, you have to think about what are you gonna do about changing, not like the program of life, but changing how you view change. That is one of the hardest things. It's honestly a miracle if it happens to a human being on this planet, where from the beginning of their life, how they perceive change, it shifts. Because for me, it's like, imagine a person, you know, was in a situation where, you know, some godly presence appeared on earth and was like, okay, choose where you want to go, human being. And imagine this human being having the audacity and the courage to say, I don't know what I am. Where can I? It's like, when I can't see my own feet, where do you want me to walk to? You see, it's like, before the prioritization of any sort of divine narrative, there is the divine experience. For me, something that is bizarre, which I think it's like, you know, theologians required to work more with philosophers. But when I looked at religions and the wars that were fought over religion, it was as if everybody saw the world as the creation of God, created by God. But when it came to human beings, it was as if we stopped seeing other human beings as creations of God, and language allowed us to, you know, destroy each other. We have come a long way though. The species has reached a point where it's become playful with language. Honestly, playfulness is one of those like ultimate things that you need to guard in a species. You know, if things become robotic, the natural playfulness of the human being, if that's under attack, then the greatest defense system needs to be built for that. And the greatest defense system, and I gave a talk on this, it's that we have to guard literally the lovers of the realm. That means there are levels of human psychology. For me, it's as if for how long, or if you were a Buddhist, you would be like, for how many eons, or a yogi, like you'd be, for how many eons have I witnessed this film of a changing world? And when will come that moment when the sky opens in ways that the earth could never see? You see, it's like my greatest realization is that all of knowledge is in the unknown, and the relationship of the unknown with the known is the frontiers of knowledge. In that relationship, we have, like, of course, there's people who can talk way more elaborately on this, but for me, when I look at the macro, it's like Einstein's relativity helps. When I look at the micro, okay, quantum physics is like, it's like the armies of human beings have in some sense marched into the micro and the macro dimensions of reality. In both angles, whether macro questions or micro questions, they all eventually meet the unknown. So that bridge between the known and the unknown is where the species has to make a decision. Are we a psychological entity, or are we a physiological entity? Because we are treating life as if it's just matter and we have bodies, but we're actually having a subjective simulatory experience of reality. You see, it's like the mind is in the room and we have avoided its nature, and therefore the language of bodies has enslaved a soul that never could be. That poetically, that this means as if like the phoenix the phoenix egg hatches, the ultimate activates again. So honestly, the point of this episode is to encourage, the generations of the future generations to actually wonder about what space means, and how, if it's meaningless, then we require an experiential approach, like academic departments of all universities. All academic departments, they have to go and find these, have to incorporate an experiential dimension, in all the concepts that they teach. It's like, every person, of course, responds differently to the mystery of their world, right? For example, I would say, like, Sufi nomenclature, and they would have this view where they're like, okay, this person's an old soul, that person's a young soul, you don't know what kind of soul this person is, a jazz musician would be like a present soul. But anyways, the whole notion of it, okay, the idea of it is, in some sense, that the old soul had a familiarity with not what they saw in existence, but with existence itself. It's like some beings have a relationship with a screen of consciousness, which is the edge of their inner realm, and some people just ignore that. Right? For me, it's as if I got fascinated how, when I don't do anything, the mind is just here. It's just present. Like the simplest state of life is effortless being. Now, from that effortless being, effort-based action has arose. It's like the body was a door. We opened it and we entered the mind's room. The mind was a door. We opened it and we entered the unknown experiencer's non-conceptual domain, let's say. And the final door is to open the unknown to the unknown. You see, it's not an evolution of small to big. It's not an evolution of singular dimension into a multidimensional one. It is multidimensional to multidimensional in such an incredible way that it is not devoid of its singularity. It's as if like the same sophistication we find in the human body of all these different systems in the body, your nervous system, your endocrine system, like different systems in the body are simultaneously happening, automated. And so it's like this vision that the greatest levels of reality, free will is so free that it trusts its world, and its world happens in accordance to its entering unknown will. Right? So it's as if like in this dimension you're a character in a video game walking around, completing quests. But beyond this dimension, it's as if the programmer is designing the world. So it's as if you can even say poetically, there's all those beings that from a, let's say, transcendental yogic perspective that have not incarnated yet, they are creating the world. It's as if we are taking turns being the world and then being in the world. And the periodic table is endlessly reincarnating as civilizations. Space is an incredible mystery. And mysteries should not be feared, they should be unraveled. For me, human intelligence, for now, is pattern recognition through information layering. Okay, like through, it's like we're overlaying, imagine you had like, a bunch of glass tiles, okay? And you wrote stuff on each one of them, and then you stack them up, okay? And when you look through, it's as if you could see through all those dimensions at the same time. I guess from a mystical sense, like an old soul would be like a soul that is stacking all of its lifetimes together to then look through the glass. I'm just saying that we are projecting our own known world onto an unknown world. And the moment we realize the limits of our own known world, we become experiential students of the unknown. You see, there were people who went to gurus back in the day, and then there were those who never needed a guru. The guidance came from within their moment, not within them. Only, To truly go within is another way of saying you have become the presence of your whole moment of being. That is the great finale. Any being who realizes they're a moment of being and their humanity is inside that moment, you're instantly liberated. You're liberated from the fear of shape. Because that is really destiny. It's like a certain energy has a sort of shape. That shape has a standard of value. We don't want to lose that value. So it's like pretty much the meaning of human life is to like hold on to the shapes it perceives as long as it can. But in reality, it's not possible, so automatically there comes, you can say, like a revelation of the inner realms. How can space be a non-physical presence? It cannot be, unless the definition of physics is not being in some sense present. That means if physics is a simulation, space has meaning. If space is a simulation, physics has meaning. In the chat section, someone says our own world is taking us over. I wouldn't say it's the world that's taking over. It's like there's an attention that's present, and how you move this attention suggests how your intelligence animates. So right now when I'm giving this talk, like before I even started the talk, I knew where I wanted to pilot the talk to. Do you know? It's as if when you know the destination, it's like driving. When you know where you're driving, you can confidently drive. But when you don't know where you're going, then in some sense the past can, you know, it's like memories can shackle. If a person really looks at psychology, fear makes sense for a biological, fear, it's an important part of survival, okay? But if you think about why does the concept need to exist, there's no reason. Can you imagine a world where we did not have the concept of fear? Like we had the concept of updating in accordance to pain, but we didn't have the psychological implication of fear. That means what would a fearless species look like? Right now it's the opposite. A fearless species would not be monotone. You know, a fearless species would be ever-encompassing. To me, that is greatness. You see, there's a greatness on a human level, and it's like, you know, who's in the most fancy suit. But then there's a greatness of you surpassing the reactions of his, like a child is born. Instead of getting defined by history, it realizes that the moment is unknown and starts anew. You know, great performances are like empty canvases, really, which are being painted. We have eyes to see, we have minds to be, and we have souls to remember before the beginning. It's like right now I can completely see a materialistic view on life, you know? I can completely see a subjective view on life. I can see that it's like there's a dimension, like imagine onion style multidimensionality. We are encapsulated by a mental dimension. So it's as if we think the universe has an edge, but it's like just like where our own thoughts are, it's like that's where the universe is. Do you know like how incredible it would be if there was a great, you know, the great psychological reset of a species, and not a reset into a sort of fixed algorithm, but a reset into freedom, you know? I have had moments where, let's say, suddenly I felt, you know, a bit sad in the moment, and then I just told myself, okay, what other ways to look at the world is there? the decency of humanity is the greatest backup system for the future. You know, it's so strange. George Orwell said ignorance is bliss. And, you know, people thought that's just true in a dystopian society. But ignorance is bliss because the responsibility to react to the immensity of the unknown. It's as if you have to be comfortable being space before you're matter. Space is what was before matter was. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like matter needs a space. You gotta put the furniture somewhere. When it comes to the existential, landscape, the cosmos is where we say in unknown space, unobservable space. And then the question comes, where is space? And the question changes from where into what is space. And that's where the inner realms come in. So it's like our bodies can go a certain range, then our minds take it further, and at the final hour, the roars of the soul can be heard. For me, anytime I see indecency anywhere, it's as if I feel like, I feel like I'm being pulled back into time. It's about time for a species to advance. Like, when else can it happen? It's like, even if nobody hears me in this lifetime, there will be so many others, that will just, human beings that will be born and they will shout. It's like, where is the advancement? Where? And it's really in our vision. It's so fascinating that the destination of imagination is reality. Space is being considered present because matter is present, and space is the opposite of matter. But in reality, space is unknown. This concept that we have of space could be an error. It could be a huge human philosophical, psychological error, right? That it's not space, it is life. That means we think life intelligence is just limited to the biological body because it's moving, but life is the whole moment's event. And when I say the whole moment, it's as if our planet is, as the poet Attar says, like a dust particle, trapped in a light beam. Now we are wondering, advancing to figure out why the sun has shown us its light. To me, the sun, this might sound bizarre, but I think human beings should journey towards the sun. And people are going to be like, it's too hot, it doesn't make sense, but for some reason I feel the sun is a broadcasting system. I mean, I have thought, and I've shared this in other talks, that I have fathomed an advanced civilization in the future, just in a sort of sci-fi parallel universe context, where this advanced civilization wanted to bring life all over the planet. And so in some sense, it's as if as a geometric signal of activation broadcasting from the sun to everywhere. It's as if light is an energy carrier system. Now think it's a unique information carrier system. Now imagine there were gardeners who, these advanced, sci-fi level futuristic celestial beings, that these celestial gardeners just put the potential of particles, they planted seeds on planets. Like, literally like how a gardener would, And then these intelligent particles activate in accordance to life. So it's another way of saying the soul is sprouting from the earth. This might be a very bizarre thing to say, but there is a chance that what we are considering is a human soul is a broadcast from the center of the earth or the center of the sun. And people are going to be like, Mr. Within, what about the moon? What about in the Bhagavad Gita? Like, I'll share this with the viewers. in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a passage that says something very bizarre, but fascinating. It says that human beings that do good deeds in this lifetime, you know, if they do good actions, so if you're a good person, after this lifetime you go to the moon, and the moon, there's a heavenly abode where everybody experiences like their karmic heaven, right? So it's as if like your actions are giving you time to experience like a heaven, and then after that from the moon it comes back to the earth, right? Unless the being ascends, which means truly understands the system of reality, that this whole time space does not have a shape. Shapes are in space, and space is the unknown. And the greatest knowing on this planet, whoever you are, you know, I don't know how far my voice will echo on this planet, you know. But if you can hear me now, once you have realized the unknown is unknown, then you will see, then you will know before you meet to that which has always looked through your eyes, all of your eyes, you know. That means even the eyes beyond time, you know, which are fields of knowing. It's like the person in their past life, they weren't a person, they were a galaxy, you know. Perhaps the children of Andromeda are fields of being, you know. The world is a fascinating question mark. And when we have beliefs, we turn that question mark into an exclamation point, and we forget that there was a question mark. The mystery of reality is enough to unite us all. They say the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And in some sense, you know, it's like if man is fighting to know truth, the unknown is the greatest force. You know, in one of my sci-fi novels, I created a character who was this next level celestial general. It was set in the year 5025. And this celestial general, it's as if it was one human being, and he would raise his hand and like as if from portals in the moment, armies would arrive from other dimensions into the, you know, landscape. What I really find is that I think the ignorance is bliss of our biological existence. We are reaching a multidimensional era, and so the most important thing becomes the preservation of not outer nature, but the inner nature of human beings. Decency is the preservation of the inner nature. Decency is an abidance by a signal where before you are a person, the world knows what to do. That is perhaps an enlightened freedom. That if light had a mouth. We are alive, and what follows is a giant exploration project. You know, for me, when I look at, like, they say that the Buddha, he was born at a time where there were a lot of people who were doing ritualistic behaviors, like Brahmanism was before Buddhism, Gautama Buddhism, before Buddhism. So Brahmanism was ceremonial attitude. It was as if people were doing like weird, like hand gestures or motions to act to like connect to God. And it was Buddha who realized that you don't need to do anything to be able to realize that state, to access nirvana. Right? It doesn't have like a secret, code you got to press on, it doesn't make you that. It's like really what it is. Is realizing an energetic being is at home. Energetically, everybody is paradise. Is the ultimate. It may come across that the world right now is pretty much human beings dressing up in information, and then it's as if like information are these robot suits and like different ideological systems, like giant robots filled with different people are like fighting with each other. But I honestly ask myself, what is really the best case scenario on this planet? Like, what is the greatest thing that can happen, just to be able to fathom it, And to me, it's one angle, it's the evolution of efficiency and advancement. So it's as if on some level I want to see an infinite greatness, but from another angle, I want to see a greatness that has surpassed time. So that means it's like the person renounced their individuality and they entered the duality, which is the notion of a collective, right? And then from duality they moved on to infinity. They renounced duality and they were an infinite being. And imagine now you renounce infinity. It's as if somebody lives a certain life, and just for the sake of story, they go to the gates of heaven, and the gates open, and this voice says, enter. And the person says, I have a request. Like, imagine someone at the pearly gates having a request. And the voice of truth says, what is it? And the person says, I want to go beyond heaven. Take me beyond, right? And you will see the beyond is the starting point. That means we are the effects. We are like the known objective effects of an unknown presence, unknown causal presence. And that causal presence doesn't speak the language of words. It speaks the language of direct experiential energy. That means to me, like, if aliens landed on the planet, I'd be like, gather a group of Tai Chi masters to go talk to me, to like go energetically communicate with these aliens. All governments should have like a group of Tai Chi masters on standby in case of alien contact. I think there should be a culture that starts embracing the multifaceted position of the human being. Like when we say an advanced civilization, the way I'm seeing it, it's advanced beyond humanized frameworks. What it means is that it's so advanced that I've written about this in my science fiction novel, where in my science fiction pretty much I can go all out when I give these talks on YouTube. A certain range of it I need to filter. But pretty much a world where not only are there human beings, not only animals have been connected to advanced technology to be able to communicate. Not only are there androids walking, not only are there clones walking, not only are there collective minds walking. That means a group of human beings having one mind, It's all a multiplicity. Experiences are multiplying. Right now we're experiencing one mind with one body. In the future perhaps this multiplies. But if deep down the inner witness is as singular as the void is everywhere, then in some sense there is a freedom regardless of what happens. So it's another way of saying an ultimate advanced state of human psychology is to be free before you ever need it to be. Instant freedom, instant truth, you know. I mean, when it comes to coffee, maybe not instant coffee, but when it comes to truth, instant truth. That means it's like your truth has to be in the room, or you were never in the room, you know. Our attention, our eyes, our vision. Where is everything going to? There's some moments of my life where I feel like existence is like a paint, and it's as if the attention in the inner realms can take this paint and throw it on a canvas, you know, with a completely new outlook. And in some sense, like, how can I tell you, in my outer realms, I'm actually a very, you know, silly and calm person. But in my inner realms, there's moments where I just sit down, and in my inner realms, there's like, I release the tensions of the outer realms in my inner realms, you know, so it's non-consequential to the outer. The most advanced states are ones of being, not of doing, and being is an instantaneous knowing. How can space be a non-physical presence if the presence is starting from a non-physical place? Space is not. You see, it's as if where is the information? And one answer is that it's in our eyes. The other answer is that our eyes are in it, you know. An advanced era of philosophical innovation awaits. Thank you for listening. Much blessings and namaste.